Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Clarity and Confidence TV. I have a very special guest on a very special topic today. I have Tarrah Lee with me. Tarrah is a business development manager at Cisco. And today, Tarrah and I are talking about a special topic, and that is infertility awareness. And why is this important? So I want you to know that infertility is something that happens to 1 in 8 women. Probably 1 in 8 couples is the better way that I should say that. And in fact, 25% of women have suffered a miscarriage. But why is this important to women leaders? Because I talk a lot about women in leadership. One of the things that Tarrah and I are going to talk about today is how a lot of this is just silent. And it's a lot of the things that women are going through at work and at home, and even their partners are going through it. And we're coming to work and there's a financial toll, there's an emotional toll, there's just a toll that comes with relationships at work and the impact to our performance, and we don't talk about it. And I think that if we're elevating the conversation about women at work and women leadership, we need to talk about this very important topic that nobody likes to talk about. So welcome, Tarrah. I thought that we could just maybe start, and if you'd like, just tell us your story.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Kelly. I'm Tarrah Lee. I'm a global business development manager at Cisco, and am incredibly blessed to work for a company that is very progressive and open and caring about their employees, no matter what they're going through. And fertility is one of those. So I'll talk about that here fairly soon. But when I was 36 years old and I was working for Cisco, I became pregnant with my son. And we went through the entire pregnancy, never had any issues. It was literally textbook, and had never experienced anything from a fertility perspective. He was born a very healthy boy. He's 2.5 years old. And since then, we've had 4 subsequent miscarriages within a 16-month span. And all of those miscarriages, 3 of the 4 have been deemed chromosomal abnormalities, right? And with age, as we're getting older, our egg reserve lowers as well as our egg quality, right? And so it had been recommended that my husband and I go through IVF, in vitro fertilization, because, as you know, Kelly, they can actually, when they take the eggs from you, they can actually test them and test the DNA and ensure that they are chromosomally normal. Definitely was not the way that I wanted to go through pregnancy after having experienced such a beautiful experience with my first baby, right? I know you felt the same way with your child, but that's the way of the world. And Cisco was so wonderful with me throughout, because I was able to take their insurance. My husband is military, and military insurance does not cover fertility whatsoever. And Cisco covers up to $50,000 in fertility treatments, for over a lifetime. And so we went ahead and moved forward with that. I think what a lot of people don't realize, though, that we can talk about soon, is even though you have a lot of coverage, there are a lot of expenses that you have to cover on your own. So it's just something that really shocked us. But we went ahead and moved forward with the procedure. So within those 4 miscarriages, one of them actually happened while I was on a work call, which was incredibly, I don't even have words for it. So, I mean, I naturally miscarried while I was on the call. We already knew we had lost the baby, but I was kind of waiting for things to happen. I was on a call with my team when it began to happen, and I had to quickly get off of the call. I went back to work a week later after I had to have an emergency surgery because I had lost so much blood. And I hope that's okay to talk about on here.
Yeah, we can talk about blood.
Okay, let's talk about blood. I lost so much blood and had to have an emergency surgery, was threatened with blood transfusion. I don't want to say threatened, but I was to that point, and went back to work a week later because my role was such that I was the only person doing my job, and I had to go back, right? But it was so interesting because, I lost my father when I was 25, and I remember I needed to take like 2 months off of work because it was so painful, and I just couldn't focus in my job. But the interesting thing is this was our first miscarriage. I was 12 weeks along. I had a normal baby. And so going through this miscarriage was so bone crushing, because it's not just a fetus, it's a baby. We had hopes and dreams, and we were talking about names, and we were talking about getting the nursery ready. We were going to actually tell my boss, or I was going to tell my boss the following week, once we hit the 13-week mark. And it was absolutely devastating. But when you go back to work, it's such a silent suffering. You don't just come out and say on a call when you're, struggling to focus and saying, oh, I just lost a baby last week. It's almost taboo, right?
Right.
It's something that I think a lot of women and men might be like, oh, I don't really know how to talk about that.
Or they'll say things like, oh, it just wasn't God's plan.
Right.
You can have another one. Oh yeah. And so,
or they start sentences with at least, which is the worst thing to say to a woman who has lost a baby. At least, you can get pregnant.
At least you have one at home.
I know. It's just awful because you've just experienced loss and you're going through grief. And so I really struggled going back to work so soon. And I really wish that I would have taken more time off. And when I look back on it, I really feel like it was me. I know that if I would have said, hey, Cisco, I need 4 weeks off of work because I need to recover, they would have said absolutely. And my boss at the time, I was very open with him and he told me I needed to take more time off. And I think we as women feel like we have so many responsibilities. We're moms, we work full time, we're, spouses, we're house managers, we're everything. And we feel like I have to go back. If I don't, everything's going to fall apart. And so I really learned from that first experience that I should be more open, that I should have given myself more grace, that I should have taken more time off. And then, of course, after that, I had 3 subsequent miscarriages. Our 4th miscarriage we had while my husband was deployed to Afghanistan. So that was incredibly difficult. Of course, it was in the middle of COVID too. It was last March when everything really was, kicking up. And I had to have a surgery by myself, which was I have no words. And from there, we decided it was time to go ahead and move forward with IVF. And so I went through my entire IVF cycle, which we can talk about later, by myself, working full-time in a global role, in a new role. Absolutely, actually. And then I went through all of the preparing for transfer and everything all by myself, which was a huge challenge in and of itself, as well as, trying to hold things together at work. Your hormones are going crazy. You're bruised. It's hard to sit down because you've been giving yourself injections. It's just the hiney. Yeah. It's unreal. And just the balance, the appointments, we can talk about that too. I mean, it can be chaotic, right? And so I think it's really important to, ensure that you have yourself set up for success, no matter what, right? And that can look very different for a lot of people. And I really struggled with, what do I tell people at work? How do I remain make sure that my integrity is, completely whole, while also knowing I'm going to miss a lot of work, or I'm going to have a lot of different emotional ups and downs, or, I'm just going to have a lot of different struggles. And so it's been the biggest challenge probably of my career, to be honest with you, to try to balance all of this. But I definitely, I want to say, I think it's doable, and I do, but I really feel like you need a tribe of people that have not only gone through it, maybe they haven't gone through it, but that can be really supportive. And it doesn't have to be at your work. It can be outside of that. But I think that that's so critical. So with that, I will pause, and I'd love for you to share your story too, Kelli, because I know.
Oh, thank you. And I just want you to know that, in a period of 4 years, that's a lot of ups and downs. And so for those of you, I'll give you information on how to follow Tarrah at the end, but Tarrah's been very open about her journey. And so thank you for your courage and just your openness in sharing that. And that's the goal with this, is really to just be open about something that people don't like to be open about. So my story, which I have not been as open about, so people might be listening to this for the first time going, what? I had my daughter, so I am 40, and you're 39, right, Tarrah?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So I'm 40. I had my daughter at 24. Again, I think it was just one of those things where I maybe thought about, hey, pregnancy would be cool, or a kid would be cool. And then one showed up. It was so easy, And so that was cool. And then when she was 9 months old, I got pregnant again. And just the same as you, everything was going great. I hit the 12-week mark, 12-week ultrasound looked good. I was starting to get a little belly. So people actually said, are you pregnant? And I'm like, yes. So I started telling people at work. And a few days before my 16-week appointment, I started spotting. and unfortunately, lost the baby. And to your point about, the miscarriage versus your dad, that was really difficult because, when it's somebody who's living and there's a loss, it's like an accepted grief.
Yeah.
But when you lose, a baby, or you have a miscarriage, or even if you have an IVF cycle that didn't work out, you're grieving like a future that's never going to come to a reality. And
Absolutely.
I don't think society really knows how to deal with that. I said all the wrong things to people before, I really.
Oh, me too.
I was totally one of those people. And people aren't prepared. I wasn't prepared. And it was horrible. So same thing, I had to go and have what they call a D&E, because the baby was too big to miscarry on its own. And so I had a miscarriage. I had another miscarriage after that at about, I would say, 8 weeks. And then after that, I actually had an ectopic pregnancy. And it happened at work. Nobody knew I was pregnant because I was about 7-ish weeks along, and I got this horrible pain in my side. And I thought I had I was like, do I have like appendicitis? It was like stabbing. And so I felt, like I was going to pass out. Well, I hadn't told anybody. So I run over to the executive assistant that's sitting there, and I'm like, hey, by the way, I just need to catch you up. So I'm pregnant and I feel like I'm going to pass out. Got a pain in my side. She's like, well, can I drive you to the hospital? And so of course, me never wanting help, I'm like, oh no, I'll be fine. And so somehow I get myself to the hospital and learn that the pregnancy was ectopic. And so for those of you who don't know, that's when the embryo is growing in your fallopian tube. And if they don't do something immediately, it could rupture and you could die.
Mm-hmm.
So I decided that was the end of the journey for me. This was in a previous relationship. I got divorced, met my husband when I was also 36. We got married when I was 37, and we decided we wanted to start a family. He doesn't have children of his own. Of course, I have my now teenager, which that's a whole other interview.
Crazy. She's a teenager now.
She's crazy. And so we tried for, I'd say, about 8 months and just weren't getting pregnant. And due to my advanced maternal age, as you know,
geriatric pregnancy,
yes, we are
right?
geriatric. Yes, considered in medical terms. I went to go get all the tests done, right? Hormones, scans, all the things. All the tests came back normal, which was really frustrating. Sometimes I think when everybody tells you, oh, everything's normal, like I just almost crave, like, can't you just tell me if something's wrong? Because then we can fix it. So we tried.
You want a reason.
Yeah, we tried IUI, that didn't work. And so I was actually very reluctant to try IVF. For me, I was like, is this just not meant to be? Am I playing God a little bit?
Mm-hmm.
But like you, my husband works for Wells Fargo, which also takes incredibly good care of its employees. And they have fertility benefits, which is really amazing when you have an employer that has fertility benefits. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit. So we decided, well, since we have some fertility benefits, this is important to us. Let's go ahead and investigate it. So we went ahead and started the IVF process. We went through IVF once in fall of 2019. They were able to make one embryo, go to genetic testing. We discovered the embryo was not compatible with life. The genetics nothing lined up right. And so,
which is so crushing because a stem cycle is insanity, and it's exhausting. It's exhausting, draining.
Yes.
Yeah.
So there's two parts to IVF. For those of you guys who don't know, they have to go in and they have to basically make eggs. So I'm just going to explain this at kind of a kindergarten level.
Stimulate your uterus.
Yes, exact. Stimulate the uterus, the ovaries. And so you basically take a bunch of shots. You hope that you make a bunch of eggs, and you're going into what they call monitoring appointments to see how many eggs you have or follicles you have and how big they are. And you don't know when those appointments are. They might be every other day, every third day. We just don't know, which is part of the chaos you talked about. So that's step one. And then they put the sperm and the egg together, and you hope that an embryo forms. So I had 4 eggs, but only 1 embryo forms that time. So again, there's no guarantees, but that embryo was abnormal. So we took a pause and we're like, well, we still have some money left. Do we want to do this again? And we decided we wanted to try it one more time since we had some insurance money to spend. And so then that second time we got 2 embryos, and they were both normal. And we were so excited. We had a boy and a girl. And so we then went ahead with what they call the transfer process. So the transfer process is where you basically inject yourself with a bunch of shots again, take a bunch of pills again, and they then transfer that embryo into the uterus. And then you hope and pray that that sticks and then turns into a baby. So we went through the first then transfer in May. I got pregnant. I was pregnant for about 2 weeks and then unfortunately miscarried again, which was my fourth time. And we were super bummed, that would have been a little boy. We then transferred the final embryo last September, and that one just didn't stick. So you're just talking about like this whole like wave of grief, right? Of like, yes, it's miscarriage, but you're also like, I experienced more grief after that embryo didn't stick than I did, I think, with the miscarriage. Because with the miscarriage, I was crushed, but there was like this little glimmer of hope, like we have one left.
Yeah, exactly.
When that didn't stick, I was done for like 2 days. And one of the things that I was telling Tarrah about that we actually haven't shared widely, but I'll share here, is that we were actually delighted to learn several days ago, that about a week ago, that I actually got pregnant on my own, which felt like a miracle. And I thought to myself, like, oh my gosh, if I got pregnant on my own, this one will stick. So I started to go in for all my monitoring appointments since I'm high risk and, I've had 4 miscarriages. And we found out yesterday that I'm going to miscarry again. And I thought about canceling the interview today. But the more I thought about it, like I wanted to keep it because I feel that the reason why Tarrah and I are talking about this topic and some of the things we're going to be talking about is how common it is for women to go through this process, have to show up at work, have to go be the leader, have to go and try to juggle their work and their lives while also sitting on a meeting and wondering, I wonder when, I know I'm going to miscarry. I wonder when
it's going to start. Yeah.
The emotions, just everything that goes with it. And I'm not asking for sympathy or anything like that. I think we're here to say that we hear you. This is common. We're bringing awareness to it. And this is an important thing that we should talk about when it comes to women leadership and their roles at work. So
absolutely.
So with that, Tarrah, one of the things that you talked about was how expensive it was. But it's not just financially expensive. Do you want to talk a little bit about how expensive it was? We know financially, right, that IVF costs anywhere from $12,000 to $20,000 per cycle, depending on your medicine. And that you don't just have one cycle. You have to oftentimes do this several times to make it work. So we know there's a financial cost, but what about the emotional cost? What about the cost to like your relationships at work or just your productivity at work? What about the cost to your emotional health, your physical health? Say more about that.
Yeah, that's such a good topic. The emotional piece is so vast. And I don't think that we talk about it enough. I mean, we don't talk about miscarriage enough, right? You said it, 25%, 1 in 4. I'm 1 in 4. Kelly's 1 in 4. Once I had my first miscarriage and started actually talking about it openly, I was blown away at the amount of people, even like my mother's age. They're like, oh yeah, I'm 1 in 4. I mean, it's to me, I'm almost like, this is like 3 in 4. It's incredible. And I think we need to talk about that more. And I think the emotional toll that fertility takes it's incredible. And I'm not asking for sympathy here either, but when I went through my stimulation cycle, right, where Kelly was saying you take lots of shots in your abdomen 2 times a day, and you become, which I am not a medical person, I'm in the technology industry. You also have to become a pharmacist, and you're like a mixologist, and you're mixing all these drugs,
mixing medicines, and
it's a 25-minute process before and I have a 2.5-year-old. So the hardest part for me was my husband was deployed. I have a 2.5-year-old. I had to figure out all these medicines on my own. You don't get to go into the office and then do it for you. And especially with COVID, everything is over video. I'm like YouTubing it while I'm doing it. Like, oh my God, I'm getting ready to inject myself with medicine and I don't even know what I'm doing. But that part was, I was having to wake up extraordinarily early to ensure that I was mixing everything appropriately and getting it injected before my little boy woke up, because it's just too chaotic when you have a toddler. Right. And then also, like, once my workday starts, I don't have time to do that. And you have to, this is the other thing a lot of people don't know, it has to be done at a certain time, and you have to continue doing it that time every single day. And you also have to do it at night. So, once I would get him to bed, I'd have to go and mix all my medicines, and it becomes exhausting. Your stomach looks like a war zone. the crazy pains that you have, my digestion was compromised.
Oh yeah.
I felt literally exhausted during the day at work, to the point where I would be on a call and all I wanted to do was go and nap. And my mind would literally just glaze over, because your hormones, and I also was, Kelly, probably similar with you, because of my issues and my age, I was on the most aggressive form of stimulation. And so you're talking like 10 times the amount of normal hormones coursing through your body. And it's just absolutely draining. And so trying to care for a toddler, trying to get them out the door ready for school, trying to clean your house, trying to, prepare for dinner, mentally, emotionally, physically, you're just exhausted. It's so difficult. And so the work piece too, in going through that, I think is so hard, because you don't have anybody to say, hey, I'm going through this and I'm really, really tired, and please forgive me if, if you're knowingly pregnant at work, right? And everybody knows and everyone's happy. It's kind of like it's not an excuse thing, but you can say like, hey guys, I'm not feeling really well right now. So like, please forgive me if I may, stumble or whatever that looks like. But when you're going through fertility, you can't, it's not that you can't, but I didn't feel, it's a private thing for me.
Yeah.
So I didn't really want to share that with people, but the emotional and the physical and the mental toll it's intense. And especially like, I'm a very active person. I know you are too, Kelly. I love to work out. I always have. And that even was affected. I was exhausted. I felt like crap. And I just didn't
you're carrying
like,
your ovaries around. They're like basketballs.
Oh my God. And you can feel them. It's like
you
heaviness.
can feel them. Exactly. So, I know one of the things that I really struggled with was appearing unreliable. So like I would be trying to be juggling monitoring appointments, but I wouldn't know when they would be. So I remember I have a partner that I worked with, and she reached out to me and she said, hey, Kelly, we really need somebody to help us out. Can you go and speak to this group of people, on this day? And my response to her, because again, you talked about the privacy piece, you see, one of the privileges that heterosexual couples enjoy is privacy in their baby making process.
Exactly.
But if you're using assisted reproduction, you get to this whole, like, do I say something? Should I not say something? Because, we still desire the same amount of privacy, but at some point you have to maybe say something. And then everybody like expects an announcement in 2 weeks, Yep. So she's like, can you be there? And I was like, finally, I just had to be like, okay, listen, you know what? I don't know, because I'm going through IVF and I have a monitoring appointment today, but I don't know if my monitoring appointment will be Tuesday when you need me, or if it will be Monday or Wednesday. I mean, and so there's just this whole, I had to give so many I don't knows, and I had to reschedule so many things that, as someone who runs her own business, I worried about the impact to my clients. And I would just be curious to you, as a woman who works in corporate, how has just managing just the logistics of this, how has that impacted your career? How has that impacted you as a leader?
It's been really hard. And I will say, again, Cisco is so, they're just so employee friendly and family friendly and fertility friendly and all of those things. But at the end of the day, it doesn't always trickle down, right? And so sometimes like I still feel like it's my responsibility to protect my calendar. And that's a whole nother conversation, right? But where I really struggled too is the same thing with you, where I was missing calls, right? So, I mean, we're all remote right now with COVID, but I've always been remote. So it's, just nothing new for me. With, some travel and commute time. But the hard part is, people are booking calls, and I'm in a role that's very visible. And so I work mostly with executives across Cisco in the sales organization and the product management organization. And so when those execs book calls, like their calendar is a premium, right? And you have to be on them. And most of them I'm leading. And so that has been a big challenge, because especially when you have monitoring appointments. And so just to kind of give the viewers a little bit of info about that, and I know you already did a little, Kelly, but as your ovaries are producing these eggs, they're growing and they have to get to a certain size before the doctor will go in and do an egg retrieval where they actually take them. And so you're at a point where you are sometimes being monitored every single day. And when they see you, they will tell you, okay, let's do these medications. Sometimes you have to go home and literally call the pharmacy and order, it's a specialty pharmacy, order those medications, have them shipped immediately. Sometimes you're on the phone for an hour and a half. Yeah. It's constant chaos. So I was missing a lot of meetings. I was having to reschedule a lot of meetings. I was having to try to find proxies, which is really difficult because in my role, I'm kind of the only one that does it. And so I would constantly ask myself, do I need to tell someone what I'm going through? What should I do? I don't want the entire executive team to know this. And so another issue that I was telling you about too is when I had an appointment, I would block my calendar out and I would put out of office, right? Like I'm out of office. And if you use Outlook, you know, but a lot of people weren't respecting my time and they were just blocking over and saying, hey, so-and-so has to meet at this time. I'm sorry. And, you know, you have to go and tell them I have an emergency medical appointment, but I only felt like I could say that so many times. And then the problem with the monitoring too, right? Like you can't block your calendar out. You don't know when they're going to be.
Right.
And so something that I've really implemented with our team is saying, hey, listen, we all need to have a communication protocol, right? And so if I have an emergency appointment or if you have an emergency appointment, just communicate that and that's great. And we'll figure it out, right? And my boss says something that I love. And he's like, nobody at Cisco is going to die if you're not in a meeting. And I love that because it's true. I'm not in the medical field. I'm not saving lives. So if I don't make a meeting, it's going to be okay. But one thing that I've really tried to implement is if you have to be somewhere, block your calendar out and no one needs to know what it is. No one needs to know what it is. But if my calendar or your calendar shows out of office, I will not block over it. I will respect your time because I shouldn't be required to say, hey guys, I can't make that call because I have to go in for a fertility treatment. I shouldn't have to say that. No one should have to say that. And so that's something that I've really been working on with my team is listen, like and then a couple of other things too that have to do with meetings in general. Number one, do I really need to be on this meeting? Is it a priority of mine? And if it's not, like, could you maybe record it and tell me about it later? Number two, do I have value to add to this meeting? And if not, I'm not going to attend it. And then number three, is it part of my priorities at work? And so I've really been trying to implement that as part of also like personal appointments because people have appointments for all kinds of things that they're going through and nobody needs to know why. Right. So that's what I've kind of been implementing. Exactly.
So what advice would you give to other women leaders who maybe don't have the support system that Cisco has or doesn't have the benefits that a Cisco or Wells Fargo or some other employers have? And you gave a couple, but what else comes up for you?
You know, from a financial perspective, I think that there's so many things out there right now too. CapEx Med, we found out, or CapEx MD is a financial specifically for fertility. So I know if your insurance doesn't cover it, and I highly recommend that you call your insurance or call a benefit advisor at work because you may have some benefits that you don't know about. But even if you don't, there are ways to finance. So we even had to finance a nominal amount at the very beginning because they required some money up front. And we just didn't want to take it out of our savings. And so we used CapEx MD, and it's a really, really great source. I think Care Credit you might be able to leverage too for fertility. And then the other thing too is if you don't have a support system at work, I think it's really critical. I don't think that you always have to say I'm going through fertility unless you really want to. I kind of got to a point like you did, Kelly, where especially with my manager, I didn't want to seem like I was out of integrity with my work and with my schedule because I'm certainly not. And I know you aren't either. And women leaders, especially women mom leaders, like the juggle is real, right? Like no matter what, like I might have 5 appointments in a week, but you better believe that my work is going to get done. My son's going to be happy. My husband and I are going to be fed, right? Like that's my life. I know how to do that. And I do it really well. And that's why I think I love female leaders and I love female employees because they just know how to juggle so well. Not to say men don't, right? But I think that it's really critical to have conversations and just say, I'm going through something right now. You don't have to say what it is, right? I'm going through something right now and it's critical for me from a health perspective. And so I need you to be open-minded and flexible about the appointments that are going to come up because they might be sporadic. I think you can say that, right?
I think that.
I mean, I think it's important to just be open. If you want to say it like I did, and I finally came out to my boss and said, I'm going through fertility and I need your grace because there's going to be a lot of missed, calls and meetings. And he's like, hey, whatever you need to do, I'm supportive. Again, like nobody's going to die at Cisco if you're not on these calls. So I think that's really critical. And then I think having a tribe outside of, if you don't have that support system at work, there are plenty of women out there who are going through this. Lots of us. There are lots of, Instagram pages that you can follow of women that are going through this. Lots of different IVF journeys, it's unbelievable. And I highly recommend, having that tribe outside of work because you have to have a support system going through this. You can't do it by yourself.
Yeah. So let me ask you this, because I have a hypothesis. Do you feel a sense of loyalty to Cisco because of just some of the things that they've provided to you, having this as a benefit?
Yeah. Let me tell you actually a really cool story. So when we lost our fourth pregnancy, and I'm getting teary-eyed even just thinking about this, it was just so difficult because it's kind of like, when you got to that last embryo, I was like, there's no more hope. Not to mention my husband was in Afghanistan for 6 months, and I'm like edging to 40, and I'm like, how am I going to do this? Mm-hmm. And we knew that military insurance wasn't going to cover anything. And so I was willing to do it, but I was looking at financing upwards of $20,000 to do IVF. And so people always tell me, like, you just go straight to the top. You don't even care. I've always just gone straight to the top person and say, can I share with you my story and ask you a question? So I went to our VP of HR and I just said, I want to tell you my story. Like, this is what has happened to us. And my current insurance doesn't cover. And I know it's mid-year and I can't opt into Cisco insurance, but is there anything that I can do? Because Cisco offers such great benefits and I would love to be on Cisco insurance. And she literally emailed me back that day and said, I have some really great news for you. Because of COVID, we've gone to the IRS and we've been able to open up the plan for a full year to any Cisco employee whenever they want to opt in. We're not rolling this out for 4 more weeks, but we're going to allow you to go ahead and enroll in it. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh my God, like it was unbelievable. And so we were able to start IVF 2 weeks later. And so to me, like, absolutely, I have 100% loyalty to Cisco because they cared. They listened to me. They've even been following up with me. HR's like, how are things going? I've been asked to do a blog on our Cisco, like Life at Cisco blog, to talk about fertility. And I think it's so great because they also want to add that awareness piece at work, right? To other people to understand what we're going through. So yeah, I definitely have that sense of loyalty because of the benefits that they offer and the openness with which people are willing to talk about it.
Yeah. And I think that's so important because, like, from a leadership standpoint, I think you just gave a masterclass in how to have the conversation and how to get the support that you need. But from an employer standpoint, if you're listening to this and you are in charge of benefits to your organization and you might be thinking to yourself, this is expensive. Why would we cover this? Like, what's the benefit to this? This feels elective. And of course, to anybody going through it, trust us, this is not elective. No. We wouldn't choose it. Like, this is not about getting designer babies, no matter what Paris Hilton says in the media. Like, this is,
I would much rather get pregnant on my own.
Yeah, this is a disease for sure. And so, one of the things I think is really important for women leaders is that, there are only, for every 100 men that get promoted, 85 women get promoted to manager. And when you get to the senior executive ranks, only 28% of execs are women. Yet organizations that are well represented at the top by women actually have 50% more income. And so this matters. And I think the type of support structure that, you're talking about at Cisco represents the type of an organization that's willing to invest in what's probably over 50% of their population to ensure that you're successful, engaged, supported, and now here you are rising up in the organization and you have the tools that you need to help make them more money, right? Like, everybody wins. And so I just think that this conversation is so important as it comes to women and to leadership. And I don't want to leave out, men go through this too.
They do.
My husband's at work today feeling kind of sad, right? And so it's not even this is not about just giving benefits to women. I want organizations to think about this as providing benefits to families, no matter what shape and size that family might come in. And it's not just about the individual carrying the baby or going through all the shots. It's about family, their partners and their spouses and, whatever that looks like. So, I think it's really important. I do know that there is an insurance that you can buy. It's called Progeny. And I can put that in the notes that organizations can purchase to help their employees cover some of the costs. So as we close today, Tarrah, what's a piece of advice you'd give to women leaders or just to anyone going through this?
I think to women leaders in general, I would say, I think to all leaders, I really want to say, just be open-minded and know that your employees are going through a lot of different things, IVF and fertility being one of them, right? There's so many things that people are experiencing right now. And just being able to have an open mind and flexibility and empathy can go a really, really long way. And for female leaders that are managing those that are going through this, I think it's really critical to understand this and you don't have to get down like in the deep level, but to understand, oh my gosh, my employee might be going through something deep. They may have a loss. They may have experienced 6 miscarriages and I don't even know what they're dealing with. So what I'm going to do is remain supportive and, neutral, and whatever they need, I'm going to be there. Right. And I think that that's important. Also, as a female leader, I think it's really important to, and this is just me, this is my leadership style. Not everyone has to do this, but I think as a female leader, it's important to be transparent. And you don't, again, have to say that you're going through fertility, but I think it's important to be transparent about, I'm going through something and my calendar is going to change and things are going to shift, but this is a priority for me. And so this is what I'm going to do, because that will trickle down to the rest of the organization. It will also trickle up, right? It will rise up to the other executives. And I think it's really important to just stand firm in that as well. Because this is life, right? Life is going to happen. I've always said there's no such thing as work-life balance. It's a continuum, right? Your career is part of that. Your life is part of that. Your family is part of that. And so within that continuum, you're always going to have something that's going to come up. And it's important for it to all just gel and work together. It's not like you have something going on in your personal life, work's going to suffer, something going on at work, a personal life is going to suffer. It's a continuum, right? It's a circle. And so I just think that as female leaders, it's really important for us to be transparent in whatever way that looks like for you. It doesn't have to be coming like, I'm going through fertility and in 2 weeks I might be pregnant, right? But just be open with your management and the people that report up to you and just everyone that you work with. And I'm going through something and, my calendar might be a little crazy, but please work with me because I'm willing to do whatever it takes, because that's, especially if you're going through IVF, like the IVF warriors, we're willing to do whatever it takes. Whatever it takes. And that includes at work and in our personal lives. So I think that's one of the best pieces of advice I can give.
I agree. And I think that's a huge question that people ask is, do I say something or do I stay silent? And what the advice I always give people is do what is in alignment with your values. And I think Tarrah gave a great example of some language you could actually copy and use yourself to say, here's what I'm going through. Think about what your values are and, how you would like, what are 3 words that describe how you want to move through this process, how you want to be perceived in this process. And whether you choose to be totally transparent, that's great. Do it in alignment with your value system. Maybe you have the conversation that Tarrah says, hey, I have some things. I'm asking for some grace, right? But I'll do whatever it takes. Whatever feels right for you is the right thing to do. So thank you, Tarrah, for your time. I want you to tell folks, I know you share a lot about your journey. What's the Instagram account that they can follow you at? And if there's any blogs that you want to direct them to?
So my Instagram account is at Tarrah Lee, and it's TarrahSpeerlee. No, that's a mouthful. I do have a website with a blog that has laid dormant for a while because I'm a mom and work full time. Yep. But there's some really great info there, and it's TarrahSpeerlee.com. So and Kelli, I just wanted to leave everybody with this because this is so critical. This is a piece of advice that you gave me when we first started going through IVF.
Oh yeah.
You told me that no matter what, I needed to have radical acceptance. And I remember thinking, what is she talking about? Right. But when you're going through this, you don't have any control over it. Nope, right.
Nothing.
You have none. And so you have to get to the point where it can stress you out so much trying to balance it all. But if you can just have radical acceptance and just say, this is it. This is what's happening. And I have to just move forward with it. It can truly change your experience. And I think it's even critical to say that about work. Sometimes at work, you don't have control over certain things and you just have to have radical acceptance, and it really helps you to move forward in a positive light. So I wanted to make sure and bring that up because I thought that was so key.
Oh, I learned that the hard way. When I first started IVF, I had it all in my head of this is exactly how it's going to go. And I learned very quickly that it does none of that.
Nope.
A year and a half later, and it still does none of that. So Tarrah, thank you so much for your time. If anybody listening has questions, Tarrah and I, and also I'll speak for you because I know how open you are about this, would be happy to answer anything. You can private message us on any of our social channels and reach out. But most of all, I wish you the best of luck in anyone's journey that's listening. And Tarrah, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.